So BWO is my initial idea.
Okay.
My initial idea was simple. If I can take people who already have existing platforms and doing existing good and take these elements and bridge them together, right? Then we have a whole team, right?
Yep.
So therefore, I don't have to do everything. My department is the thinking, it's the thought process, it's the big vision, right? So I found different elements of people, but I was the visionary. And once you realize is that when you have the vision, everybody don't see it. They may want to get off at a certain stop. Greed may happen. You start making money, and a person like, well, you might have this vision for the culture and this unity, but they like, I'm just in it for the business and the money.
Is this hypothetical or is
No, this is actual reality.
Okay.
Right? So, with the limited experience that I did have during the time of picking the right partners, adjusting the red flags and things of that nature, right? From the original vision, it went awry, right? So BWO, first of all, is still existing. I teach students, and me and my business partners, Chico, we teach students week to week. All I did was take that same vision and adjust it with new people.
Okay.
Right? Because the problem wasn't the vision, the problem was the people that was helping bring the vision forth into reality.
What's going on, everybody? We have a very, very special episode of Finding Your Niche with Neish. Y'all, I'm so excited about the person that's joining me on the couch today. Really, this man is en route to becoming an iconic thought leader of our time, really just a change agent for the culture, and has found his niche in just that, right? Creating positive change for the Black experience here in America. Let me welcome the one and only, no other than 19 Keys.
Man, pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Yes, thank you for coming. So I knew like one of the big things that I definitely want to get into is you was going to come with the drip, of course. And I'm interested to kind of know a little bit about that because you don't talk about it that much. Talk to me about, where did you get your mind for design, right? What was the inception of you like learning about fashion and being in love with it essentially?
That's a good question. I look at fashion as design. Right. So, I think first person that probably inspired me was probably my older brother. He always had style. He used to wear his clothes. He always, put it together a certain way before he walked outside. Right. And I always paid attention to that because he paid attention to detail. So as you asked him the question, it's probably the first time I'm acknowledging him as part of my inspiration as far as, making sure you step outside with sort of a manicured look. But also just growing up Muslim, like we always had a uniform, right? Like growing up in militant classes, you got to make sure that your nails are cut. You got to make sure that your shirt is pressed. You got to make sure that you stepping outside pristine. I used to always see my father crease his pants before he stepped outside. So I always believe that, the way you look, right, is a part of who you are and the perception that people have on who you are, right? And the confidence that you have as a man is also connected to that as well. Right, so presentation is everything, right? And the way you design yourself is you create the interaction and the perception that others have about you. So you can be a confident person, but why dress like you're insecure, right? That doesn't make sense, right? Because now you have to do more work in order for people to catch up their perception of you based on how you internally feel or who you internally are. So I always looked at a design as a way to express self, right? And to communicate who you are before you say a word. Right. And so when I look at some of the greatest leaders, they was always fly. That's something that people miss because if they was dirty, it's something you would notice. Right. But therefore, they got that out the way so that you can respect them for who they are. Right. So now they're coming with a certain uniform. They're coming with a certain look. And I implore everybody should, when you step outside, try to dress your best every single day.
Yeah.
Number one, like I said, is going to admit that confidence. Number two, you're going to communicate to the world who you are before you ever have to say it, because the world is a place of judgment. Right? Whether a person wants to be judgmental or not, we have all these boxes of biases.
Yeah.
So the moment we see you, we're categorizing you based on the way you look and every other person that is attached to the way you look, right? And the feeling that we have to your look. So growing up in Oakland, somebody wearing a black hoodie, dreads, street nigga. So any feeling that I have I'm now pushing that on you.
Mm-hmm.
Whether that's who you are, that's how you operate, but you're forcing me because you're wearing that uniform. Right? So yeah, I look at the Che Guevaras, I look at the Marcus Garveys, I look at the Honorable Elijah Muhammad's,
yeah,
right? The Malcolm X's, the Black Panthers. They all had an aesthetic when they stepped outside, so that it complements the movement and it complements the philosophy, the ideologies, and the agendas that they wanted to push.
No, I love that. I think that's dope. When I think about kind of like the idea of you conceptualizing something, right? Or the ideation process behind the design. Talk to me a little bit about the kufi, because you've kind of like done the kufi reimagined, I would say. And so what is your thought process behind like creating something, you know, from the beginning to the end product?
Well, it's funny. I never wore kufi as a child or anything of that nature. But you know, we wore bandanas when I was a child, to be honest with you, you know, growing up in the streets, you know, but I always thought about like, that never represented who I was. Now, from a design perspective, like everything that I design, I draw out first, right? So I literally would draw it out by hand, and then I'll take it into a digital form, right? Because I need to conceptualize it. But when I draw things, you know, you can use the golden ratio, the Fibonacci sequence, like there's an actual application to design, right?
Yeah.
It's like, you know, never overcomplicate the design, right? Make sure the design is honest, right? So there's rules to the design. I believe it's Dieter Rams' 12 rules to design. And these are principles that are applied to, you know, engineering and product design that we see everywhere, but we don't notice, right? Sort of like if you look at the Apple phone, it's designed a certain way so that people interact with it a certain way. When a black man created the doorknob, he designed it a certain way, and everybody has to interact with it.
Right.
So I think about design as like the way it controls the way we interact with reality.
Okay.
Right? If you design yourself and what you conceptualize as a respectable black woman, right? People gonna walk outside and that's the first thought that they're gonna have. Like, oh, beautiful, respectable black woman, right? Today you got a little revolutionary flair going on, but at the same time, you know, you expressing your style and your feminine flow.
That's right. Talk that talk, Keys.
You know what I'm talking about?
Let them know.
But from a design perspective, like I actually studied, you know, design. I study architecture a bit. I study like the principles, and then I apply that, right? So most people don't realize, like when you see the crown, I designed every aspect of it. And it's like now we got the sun, moon, and stars. And at first, my first iteration of inspiration came from Elijah Muhammad. I seen that starry crown that he had. He stepped on stage and it just lit like a chandelier.
Yeah.
And it was in representation of what he was speaking about as well. Like he didn't go in there dressed in overalls and hit the stage and say, hey, I'm a guy, you guys are guys, and we're gonna take over the world. No, he looked like the man that was on the mission that he had the message for.
What is it, you know, when somebody, you know, interacts, when they have like maybe a first time interaction with Crown Society, like what is it that you want the person to experience when they put on the crown?
Crownfidence. The crownfidence, right? It's this phenomenon of when you put it on, you just feel more confident.
Okay.
Right? Because it's like when we just came back from Ghana, and the Ghanaians have the Akan people, and the Akan people, they actually wear similar symbols. So these celestial symbols are the sun, moon, and stars. And it represents your chieftain. It represents your connection to the cosmos. It also represents that masculine and feminine balance, right? And so it's like in there they have a story of like the star child, right? And so when you're putting that on, it's a representation of like, I know who I am. I'm aware of who I am.
Yeah.
Right? I can finally wear something that represents myself, and you see somebody else wearing it, right? You're like, okay, they must be in connection to some sort of knowledge of who they are. Versus when we wear some Gucci, Fendi, Prada, that don't say you know who you are at all. That spells no connection.
It says the opposite.
It says the opposite. It says nothing about your connection to your heritage, your culture, your roots, your beginning, how intelligent you are, nothing at all. It just says that I spent money with a European designer.
Yep.
And those design aesthetics, they have amazing design aesthetics, but it has nothing to do with any connection to who you are, right? So when you wear that crown, yes, that's an instantaneous. And different people have different reactions. Like it can also be a representation of enlightenment, right? Or the crown chakra, because that's where you're going to get that, you know, intellectual thought when you're thinking up here in your higher mind. So putting something on it, it focuses your attention to your mind, not your lower self. So now you walking around with that confidence, like you can do anything.
Yeah.
Even when people don't even realize how they react to it sometimes. Like, you know, it's like you seeing a beautiful person. You trust beautiful people more than ugly people. This is just a scientific fact. This is not something the 19 Keys come up with. I don't judge people based on, you know, looks. But society does.
Yeah.
Right? So, but when you put that crown on, you look good.
Okay.
That's all I'm trying to say.
Okay. No, okay. So also when I think about you, obviously I think about fashion and design, but the other big thing I think about when I think about you is kind of like I said at the top of the interview, as a change agent, right? So I'm curious to know, like when you get out of bed, what is the level of burden that you have, or maybe not have, when you think of the responsibility that you carry to kind of be the person to, or one of the people to essentially change, shift, cultivate the narrative of the Black experience in America?
Well, I'll say this. There is a level of heaviness, definitely in my role, but I am not the person or the only person. The people are the leaders today.
Okay.
People are moved by massive influence, and that massive influence is often there watching what the masses do, right? And I say that people are the leaders because when you look at movements throughout time, unless people show up, participate, finance it, there is no movement. A man can shout and say, hey, this is the direction I want us to go, right? There are layers of leaders. It may be the first line of people who say, I agree with that. I think that's a good direction. Thank you for being a vessel of change.
Okay.
Right? Because you are just a symbol that represents something that we all consciously know. And thank you for pointing us in that direction. But every person that participates is a leader in the movement. Right? There's somebody that's following them. So they like, okay, you all think that this is a good way to go? Now somebody see their lead and then they're jumping in. Then somebody see their lead and they're jumping in. Then somebody see the crowd leading, right? Following who so-called this one person that represents this idea, right? So I want people to understand that when you participate in the movement, the burden is just not on the person with the idea. The burden is on the people who participate in the idea, right? So it's like
they're subscribing to that.
100%. And people will follow the first line of revolutionaries that say, you convinced me already. Then those people that word of mouth say, man, I joined this, I love it. Those people are following that line. Then the third line of people are following the crowd of people that are now a part of it, right? So we kind of only point to the leader when things are going wrong.
Yep.
You know what I'm saying? When things go wrong, you know what? Nope, it was your fault. You let us in the wrong. Right? It's like, wait a minute. I didn't tell your peoples to join. You told your peoples to join. So now it's also your responsibility as well to make sure things go right. So, and I say that because we got to kill this whole, you know, somebody's coming to save us. I'm not. I'm not the person that's coming to save you. And when you think about that, this is a tactic in war strategy, right?
Okay.
That when you really want a people to understand, right, that they have nowhere to go. They're going to fight their hardest. I forgot the military leader name, but he did this to his people to where he basically, they wound up on the shores of this land and he sunk holes in every ship, right? And he basically let them know that, listen, there is no going back. The army that we got to fight is this way, right? And unless we cut through them and win this war, we're dying. Right? Because there is no going back. There's no ships. And he had to set that up for them to let them know that there's no plan B. There's nobody coming to save us. And what you realize is that people fight harder, right? They're more present when they're facing that imminent of it's now or never, right? Because they have to give their all into it. So every time we think we have a savior, we think we got grace and we think we got room to mess up more. It's like, no, it's now or never. This is the last stall. Like, I want people to understand, like, nobody else is coming after this because if this fails, there's too much evidence on why we don't even need nobody to come because of all these people that have come before, tried to help us. We ignored everyone and then waited on another one. Yeah.
With you kind of saying that, that also kind of makes me think of just the concept of like fight or flight, right? And how we need to kind of like quickly decide what we're going to do, what route we're going to go. I'm curious to know from you, what would you say is your greatest fear for our culture?
I can't say what my greatest fear. I don't think I think of it like that.
Okay.
But I will say that
maybe biggest concern.
Us becoming godless. right?
Mm.
We are at this stage now where if you think about the lifestyle of the culture, which is really a death style, because we go more towards death than we do towards life.
Mm-hmm.
It's more us following a devil mindset than a God one. Because you got to think about it. Human beings are given free will. The culture is given free. Do whatever you want to do. That's the
Mm-hmm.
idea in the culture now. Be shameless, judgmental, free. You just do whatever you want to. Damn the consequences or the ripple effects. That's not that's not the statements that we heard from all spiritual backgrounds, religious orders, cultures throughout antiquity and time. Right?
Mm-hmm.
No, there was rules and order and discipline and accountability you have to follow,
Yep.
right, in order to live a just, balanced, and equal life.
Mm-hmm.
Today it ain't about none of that. It's about individualism. Do whatever you want.
Mm-hmm.
So we don't realize that we're being tricked, right? To where everything we do is selfish, right? And it's individualism.
Yeah.
So we're not following a more God mindset where it's like, what about this age of accountability? It's like, no, let's have an age of pleasure, right? Let's have an age of don't use your will to follow in accordance to what you believe the will of God is. Because my question to everybody is, not what you want to do when you wake up. What does God want you to do? Right? That changes your whole life.
That's good.
If you live your life according to that question, yeah, this is what I want to do in my life. This is my selfish desire for me. Right?
Yeah.
But what does God want me to do? And just the thinking elevates your thought.
Mm-hmm.
It makes your vision bigger. It changes your patterns and your habits because you're like, okay, God will want me to do good. Right? God will want me to serve his people. God will want me to bring out my traits and qualities to be at my highest level.
Yeah.
So now I have my little vision, but I can't say that this is aligned with what I think God wants me to do. So now you take your free will to do whatever you want to, and you say, I could do whatever I want to, but what if I do what God wants me to do?
Mm-hmm.
And so just that thinking elevates you.
Yeah.
Just that thinking changes your path. Because if you're not following what you think in your mind, I ain't saying what somebody else is forcing you to do.
Right.
If you're not following what you think in your mind God wants you to do, then who are you following?
That's good. High level conversations.
Yeah.
What would you say? Because I think like a part of the process too, when you think about the objective that God has for you versus what you have for you, I think throughout that journey, you come into, I guess, you're confronted with things that you need to change or areas of improvement for you to get to that highest level that God has designed for you. What would you say, being the king of like high level conversations, is the hardest high level conversation that you've had to have with yourself?
The hardest, I think, is about healing.
Okay.
Healing the shadow self. Once you begin this journey of like, I'm going to expose myself to myself, right? I like going down a rabbit hole of, what made you who you are, the good, the bad, and the ugly, right? Exploring the parts of yourself that you are, because that shadow self is that self that you know about that you would be ashamed that the world sees, right? It's your childhood behavior. It's the things that you hide, right? And you build up all of this. You wear the clothes, the jewelry, the fanciness to hide the child that's been hurt, right? And going through that journey of self-healing, right? And discovering those parts of yourself and being accountable for those parts to make yourself better is the hardest thing. Because that's a level of self-awareness most people don't even want.
Right.
And we mask our behavior with stimulation. We mask our behavior with toxic behavior, right? And we never really want to truly face self. And this is why it's dangerous to not be shamed sometimes.
Yeah.
Right? Because you don't face it. Right? So now you're not accountable for it.
It's going to snowball.
Yeah, right? So I feel like that hardest journey for anybody is just going through shadow self and being honest with yourself and exposing who you are to yourself. The person in the mirror.
Yeah.
Is it really as great as the world sees it? Because we all have a shadow self, then we have a light self. The light self is that's what we show the world. Right? The shadow self we don't want the world to see. We may still be working on that person. Right? So it's like that ugliness inside you.
But specifically though, what would you say were some of the ugly parts that you had to kind of address?
I would just say, like, starting off, because I went to therapy, just not a lot of sessions, a few sessions. And it was just more so going back into like family, right? Like thinking about my own ego, thinking about my own selfishness, right? Thinking about my treatment of self, my treatment of my relationships, right? I think that's where it starts for me, right? Like my parents been through, like we grew up in a crazy, chaotic environment, and just thinking about how did that affect me and my relationships,
Yeah.
right? Even when it comes to like, my older brother and my father, it's like they taught me how to be like a man's man, very masculine,
Okay.
right? They taught me the player side of life, if you will, but at the same time, my there was instilled the tenets of Islam, so it also taught you how, what was the value of a woman. But you don't really learn that until you go through this journey yourself.
Yeah. Yep.
Right? And so it was like that part where I had to learn, right, the part of manhood that wasn't taught by my brother and my father. Right? That's more the side that the world thinks is like feminine, right? So like being empathetic and really understanding the true value of a woman, understanding the true value of yourself, because it also goes down to self-love. I think, and then treating family a certain way, not being a nonviolent communicator, like thinking about others the same way you would think about yourself, and those times where you think you're right, questioning whether you were right in the first place, right? It's just this whole process of examination for me, and I mean in all categories, because I'm nowhere near perfect. Like I'm the most work in progress, right? Because I'm also young and I'm in position, but it's like I also come from the streets.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? The streets of Oakland and St. Louis, like learning how to pick the right business partners. You know what I'm saying? Learning how to, make the mistakes and then fail forward and then pick back up and keep moving. Learn how to deal with, people that have to fall off on the trail to the vision.
Yep.
Right? Family, friends, close ones, loved ones, right? Just course correcting throughout the whole process has been an internal journey that the world doesn't always get to see. And it's like, this is the work that I have to do internally every single day, right? And I tell people, for me, it ain't about being perfect, but it's about being whole, right? And that means that all those different areas of yourself you work on, so that when you are outside and you are communicating with the people, that you try to represent your light and dark self at the same time.
Yeah, I want to unpack that a little bit. What you just kind of spoke on, connecting yourself to certain people. Let's talk about BWO for a second. I want you to kind of address the idea of what was the actual fallout? Can we see a resurrection of BWO? What would you say to like what kind of happened? Because it was so exciting, so much momentum, and then.
So BWO is my initial idea.
Okay.
My initial idea was simple. If I could take people who already have existing platforms and doing existing good, and take these elements and bridge them together, right? Then we have a whole team, right?
Yep.
So therefore, I don't have to do everything. My department is the thinking, it's the thought process, it's the big vision, right? So I found different elements of people, but I was the visionary. And once you realize is that when you have the vision, everybody don't see it. They may want to get off at a certain stop. Greed may happen. You start making money, and a person like, well, you might have this vision for the culture and this unity, but they like, I'm just in it for the business and the money.
Is this hypothetical or is
No, this is actual reality.
Okay.
Right? So, with the limited experience that I did have during the time of picking the right partners, adjusting the red flags and things of that nature, right? From the original vision, it went awry, right? So BWO, first of all, is still existing. I teach students, and me and my business partners, Chico, we teach students week to week. All I did was take the same vision and adjust it with new people.
Okay.
Right? Because the problem wasn't the vision, the problem was the people that was helping bring the vision forth into reality. Right? So we had people that putting out faulty products. We had people that, weren't aligned with the idea of really pushing the culture forward to capitalists. Right? And it was capitalizing off my platform, right? And then tried to use that for their own selfish gain.
Okay.
Right? And so me being a master general strategist, you know what I mean? Once what they did failed, of course, I'm going to take that same idea and I'm going to continue it because I never lost faith in it in the first place. Only time you see something goes bad when I'm doing something is when I'm doing it with the wrong people.
Yeah.
Right? So I never lost faith in myself or lost faith in the vision. So we pick it back up with the right people take the lessons and the learned experiences and move forward. And that's where we at right now.
What would you say though is your biggest takeaway from that experience?
For me, it's just about having alignment with the right people. I'm more thoughtful in the things that I do now.
Okay.
Right? Very thoughtful. It's like a lot of money gets thrown at me a lot, and I say no to a lot of things. Like when we go on platforms, we're not upselling. I did a whole tour and I didn't upsell a single thing.
Wow, that's big.
Right? We go on, I've been on the biggest platforms in the world. You don't see me selling nothing, right? Because all I want to do is push the people forward.
Yeah.
Right? So I've never been driven by money, right? And so you have to make sure that the people that you align with have the same, ethics and values and principles that you have. So now that thoughtfulness is saying that we thinking about brand and legacy with this.
Yeah.
Right? So I can't just, get in bed with anybody when it comes to doing business. I have to make sure that these people have the same vision, the same mission, the same values that I have, so that the same thing doesn't happen again. Right? Something happening once, that's just a lesson, but twice and 3 times, that's character.
Right.
Right? So for me, it's about that. It's about like, all right, the next iteration, and now we've built something so beautiful, I think, that the community is coming together. High Level Conversation is the biggest show in the world. Especially a show like this ain't never been done. And we have a real opportunity to turn this into institutions, turn this into some real structure behind it. So
yeah,
for me, it's just about that thoughtfulness now.
Yeah, thoughtfulness and connection over, connecting and collaborating. What do you say? What is your response to people who maybe were thought leaders prior to yourself, who feel like maybe they contributed to your current day mindset, or believe that they should get credit for how you think, the way you move, the way you act? What do you say to those type of people?
I don't know. It sounds delusional. Shoot, I'm a learning man, so I may have learned from many different people. If there's anybody want to take credit, man, that's that. My biggest root foundation is the Nation of Islam. You know what I'm saying? My father, my mother, my brothers, my sisters, my environment. But we pick up books to learn. Today sometimes our books looks like a video.
Yeah.
Right, that we may learn from. Like there's people that are influenced by me. I don't feel like I have the need to take credit for them learning something, because I put it out there for that purpose. But I've never ran into that problem though. I've never heard nobody say like they are taking credit for making 19 Keys or anything of that nature, because I've done so much on my own, so many struggles, and not on my own, but in the sense of like, we ain't had no budget. Nobody's put, when we did High Level Conversation, nobody put budget behind it. That's me and the team. You know what I'm saying? We finance and put everything out of our pocket. So unless you're the one paying for it, I don't want to hear it. You know what I'm saying? If that's the case, shit, where the check at? You know what I mean? Show me the receipt for the check that you wrote, that you built, because the idea is nothing without resources. Right? There's many men and women that know way more than me, but their execution ain't the same. And they may not be willing to put up their own money to back their mind. Right? So I don't care about if you influenced me. You know what I'm saying? Did you finance me?
That part. That part. I love it. I want to talk to you about dualities, right? The duality of maybe being reactionary versus revolutionary. Like, how do you shift yourself, I guess, into the mindset of that in itself?
So it's like reactionary versus revolutionary. For me, it's like the idea of protecting Black women.
Okay.
Protection is something that happens before, not after, right? What we really want to say, right, how do we prepare Black women, right? Because the preparation is the protection, right? A lot of people, when they raise their children, they tell them, I want to protect my child. And as you so-called are protecting your child, you're limiting their capability of protecting themselves, because you're not readying them for the world that is, right? You're protecting them from the world that is. So now they don't have that same confidence, capability, and skill set to do for self, right? And so without having that rites of passage where a person goes through that process of saying, I'm leaving the home, to being able to do it on my own, right? They're never going to be prepared for the world, right? So unfortunately, we are a very reactionary society, not even just culture, because we always kind of like look at Black people, they're doing it wrong. It's like, no, as a societal whole, right, the lower class rungs of society are reactionary. That goes from Black, that goes white, that goes to anybody that's at that lower caste system, all reactionary thinkers. That's why you're at the bottom, right? The revolutionary is the ones that are willing to take the risk. Those are the ones that's willing to step ahead to prepare themselves to think about the future.
Yeah.
So it's like we're in the midst of how many technological shifts and how many of them are reactionary and waiting for somebody to have some insidious plan so we can react to say how evil they are with it versus to say this is how we're going to use it with our vision.
Yeah.
So you have to step out of survival mode and you have to get into a mode where you're actually building and developing and thriving.
Yeah.
So for me, that reactionary just goes from a person that has a plan and a person that doesn't.
Speaking of people that have I think one of the best ways to grow is kind of like the people that came before you. I know, like you said kind of earlier in the interview, you just, made a trip back to the motherland. I'm curious to know, because you've taken in a lot of information, what would you say is maybe your favorite piece of ancient wisdom that you've gotten that has benefited you in your life?
I don't know how ancient it is, but for me, where there's a will, there's a way. I think it might be originally from Marcus Garvey or Elijah Muhammad. I think I might have heard it in Oakland. But for me, I even got that tatted because throughout my life, anytime I use this like a superpower. You know what I mean? Like anytime something goes awry or some issue happens, I just think like if there's a will, there's a way, and I just repeat it like a chant, and possibility opens up. You know what I mean? Because I truly believe if you can think it, you can do it. Right? So if it's a thought that's in the mind, the fact that my mind was able to conjure it, it also means that I'm able to birth it. Right? Like that's the thing, but the process of giving birth is different for everybody.
Yeah.
Right? So for me, that will where there's a way, it always reminds me that it's possible. And if it's possible, the question is, am I willing to do it? Right? So, I mean, shoot, that to me is like something that I'm going to use for the rest of my life because it just tells me to step up to the occasion.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You can make excuses or you can make a way.
Oh, I love that. Okay, speaking of paving a way, with this show, my original intention, finding your niche with Neish, I learned for myself that my burden, and I think like for people who don't know, like a good place to start when it comes to like your calling, your purpose, is to also start with what's your burden when it comes to like society. What is it that you want to contribute to changing that burden? And so I feel like a lot of people, there's still some margin there and maybe like a window of people who don't fully know what it is exactly that you do and what you contribute. What would you say, if you had one, is your niche?
My niche is inspiration and education. I was listening to the Minister Farrakhan the other day, the Honorable Minister Farrakhan, and he said when to breathe, right, is like perspiration, right? So that's inspiration, right? Because a person inspires, right?
Okay.
And then we exhale, right? So when you are delivering a person truth and giving them knowledge, right, and you are inspiring them, you are helping them breathe, which means you are giving them purpose to life. You're giving them the resources to life that they need. Many people throughout the hoods of America can't breathe right now, right? They feel choked, right? They can't afford their rent. They don't know how to think. Society, the agendas, all of these different things are clouding their mind. And we know one of the issues that people have, you talked about the nervous system, is that when the nervous system gets to that point of like fright or flight, a person gets choked up, right? A person is not breathing. A person gets erratic or they get fearful or they have like short breaths or they get anger where they have erratic breaths. They're not controlling that breath. Because when we do that, we thinking clear. We have clarity of mind. We have clarity of vision, right? We have sight. Now we know how to move forward. So it's really about just allowing people to breathe, right? So that they can think, because that's the whole entire goal, is to get people to think. How do we become forward thinkers? How do we become builders of industry? How do we break our self-limiting doubts and belief where it's like, damn, if Keys can do it, I can do it. He's on all these platforms. He's not a rapper.
Yeah.
He's talking about thought leadership. What is thought leadership, right? It's leading people into the right thoughts, teaching them about technology, teaching them about spirituality, teaching them about economic literacy, about what's going on in the world, what's their place in it, and how to move. So for me, people always ask that. They only ask that because they usually want to put you in one box. So if you're doing too many things, they don't know how to classify you, right? I do what's necessary for the mission. So I might be a designer. I design clothes. I do marketing. I do branding, right? I'm a speaker, right? I'm an innovator, right? I'm a director and a producer of a show, right? I'm a host at the same time, right?
Mm-hmm.
I have products that we sell, nootropics, right? So, you know, I'm a CEO, I'm a package designer, I'm all of these things that I need to be. Why? Because I didn't have resources for somebody to help me along the journey, right? So the biggest thing we got going on right now, of course, is high level conversations, right? If you want to look at anything, just look at high level conversations right now. It's the biggest show, right, in the culture. Nobody's doing numbers like we doing at all.
Yeah.
How do we able to do that? Because we know how to think. And once you become a master thinker, you become a master doer, a master builder.
I love that. I want to stick with that theme of speaking to the body, and like you talked about, kind of like that inhale and changing. If I were to ask, let's say, let me put it this way, if we're sticking on that theme, how do you keep your finger on the pulse of the culture when it comes to like high level conversations? What kind of commentary should we have in order to shift and change the narrative? How do you kind of like keep up with those trends?
Well, I don't really focus on the trends. Trends come and go. There are some things that are necessary regardless of what the time is, right? So we went through a great demoralization of society where we lose our morals and our values. So for me, if I look at the problem, as often the opposite is the solution. Bring back the morals and values. People are uninspired, inspire them. People are ignorant, educate them, right? People don't know how to eat, show them how to eat. People don't know how to move, show them how to move, right? Yeah. Right. So for me, it's all about, this is the current death culture, show them a culture of life, right? So if you really want to know, like, my whole movement is about pushing out a new culture, right? But then at the same time, I create bridges and connections with people all throughout society because it's about globalizing this movement now, right? Like, it's 45 million of us here in America, it's 1.4 billion in Africa, right? There's another 1.5 in the UK. There's, I don't know how many millions in Brazil. We're all over this planet Earth, right? But for me, it's about light and dark, not black and white. You know what I mean? Because there's somebody who may share the same color skin, but not the same color in the mind. They might not have the same ethics, values, morals, and principles. They don't care about none of this pro-melanin, pro-black talk. Right? They pro-green. They want the money, right? So I look for people who have that light consciousness within them, and then we can tap in and build. So when you see me working with like minds, like Earn Your Leisure, right? That's because they have a mind for the culture to push us forward. And we just that generation that was failed before, so we don't want to fail the next generation that comes after. So everything that we weren't given, we want to give. They didn't give us the cheat codes. We get the cheat codes, right?
Yeah.
Nobody told. We seen people executing on real estate and stocks, but nobody came and taught us that, right? Like, I also, it's like, I don't mind this generation failing a little bit because that's what's necessary. Like, we got to have a pact for the next 100 years. So for the first 10, 20 years, this is research and development. We got to get this thing right. But the problem that happens is we are insisted upon killing those and being so over, you know, gossipy and rumorville about what they're doing in the building stages versus actually allowing them to build. Like, let's see what happens if you allow these people to build for the next 10, 20 years. Right? If you go look at every rapper, all they do is talk about how toxic they was in the beginning stages of their life. Yet let them make some money and everything is cured and forgiven. Right? If you go look at most of the CEOs and billionaires, they failed how many times before they succeeded? But if those people were destroyed before they did something great, so I really live by that moniker. They may hate your process, but they'll love your results.
We don't give enough margin.
Hell, we don't give no grace. That's what's wrong with us. It's the grace. Right? We don't have no grace room for growing. We know the active history of the last 100 years of how we've been demoralized, we've been destroyed, we've been emasculated, right? We have been separated from each other, taken away. So if it took those decades and those centuries to do that, how long does it take for us to get it right? If we are the children of the side effects of everything that's been happening, so you expect this generation to get it right the first time, these are first generational curse breakers. Right? This is the first time they're getting some money, the first time they're breaking out of the hood and ghetto mentalities that we have to present ourselves as more enlightened to get things right. So it's like, if you don't give these people time to actually lead, to build, to develop, then you're going to destroy what's being built.
Before we even accomplish the mission. Especially if you're not willing to
build something your damn self. It's always a person ain't building nothing, complaining and gossiping and hating on a person that's building something. Because the people that's building don't have time to be worrying about somebody else's building. You know what I'm saying? It's the people that ain't building shit that's always focused on somebody else that is.
He said it. Not me. Something that I kind of learned, which I actually do, one of the things that I actually love about you when I was studying you, is just in your just typical normal vernacular. You say a lot. You understand me.
Yeah.
Okay. And so when I was thinking about that, I was actually thinking about how powerful that is, the idea of understanding, right? Can you kind of talk a little bit about the power of being able to actually understand something
Yeah.
and what it's been in your life and how it's benefited you?
Yeah, I mean, people say about understanding and understanding, right? Which can kind of, for me, kind of go to a place of like logically having a knowledge of something and then knowing something, right? Like, it's a difference between believing and knowing, right? It's like, I know the sun will rise. That's
Right.
not something that I have to think about or believe in, right? It's something that's not subjective of my will, right? It's the universal law of reality, right? That sun will rise, right? That moon will come in absence of that sun, right? So as we look at the sun, moon, and stars, those are things we know, right? But things that we have to believe in are not things that we actually know.
Yeah.
Oftentimes we have to have faith in those things because they are unseen, right? Sometimes we have to have faith in our own potential until we make it manifest. And then the person sees it and now they know it. I don't need you to believe me. You see it, so you know me, right? That's different. So when I have a knowing of something, right, now I don't have to take your word for it, right? I know it to be true.
Yeah.
So for me, as I'm always, repeating that, do you understand me? It's because we often listen, but we don't often understand, right? So we don't never know, right? So we hoard all this information and we're constantly stimulating ourselves with the next bit of information because we are a culture of overconsumption. No, I want you to understand the things that you intake. Because it's better to understand a little than to know a lot, or to hear a lot but understand none. Right? So a person would sit there and they'd be like, man, I went to college for 4 years, but what do you know?
Right.
Right? What can you do with what you know? Because how much did you actually understood? Right? And that understanding can take you very far. Right? But the information can take you nowhere unless you know how to apply it.
I love that. I think another way that I would describe what you're saying is, especially when you tap into the faith element, is to see it before you see it. When you think about your own life, what is something that you currently see today that you are realizing before you actually saw it tangibly?
Man, just this movement in time that we're living in right now. It's like, I always knew, right, that this idea of 19 Keys could exist in reality. Somebody who can be a global thought leader, travel the world, and enlighten the culture. It can be on all the platforms. You can be on TV. You can build out things, and the people will gravitate towards it. And that can only happen when the right idea happens at the right time.
Yeah.
Right? So, like, to see people invigorated with the passion to be like, yo, Keys, you have changed my life. You know what I'm saying? Yo, Keys, my bro, he getting out the streets. He tapping into your videos. He eating this. He working out, right? He focusing on stocks, this, that, and the third. Like, I always knew that we can have that culture, but that's the culture that's being built right now. Right? And it's beautiful to see because now I'm starting to see us get resources behind some of our ideas.
Yeah.
Which is the most important. Like, a poor man with no resources can't do anything. Not only cannot build, he can't protect what he built. Right? So now I'm seeing good minds with money. Right? And that to me is the most important because I want to see the rich and righteous. Right? People have always looked at those who are so-called the 1% and have money. And, we always known that those people have resources and budget. So whatever ideas that they have, they can implement that into reality. So we scared of their reality or their agenda because we know they have resources to implement their agenda. Nobody's scared of your agenda because you got no resources. It's not that you don't have one. So now I'm seeing a counter agenda, right, that can happen because we now have resources. And these resources can't be taken away because it's not just money. Our resources is a different level of assets. It's our communication, it's our information, it's the technology that we now have access to.
Yeah.
So the access that we have today is our wealth. It's our power, but how we yield it, right? That's going to determine where we are in the next 100 years.
Yeah. Wow. That's huge. I'm curious to know, what is the actual objective that you believe God has for you ultimately?
I can't pretend to know his full agenda, but I know he wants me to continue to enlighten the people. Today, I think the hardest thing to get a hold of is the truth. We have a society that is constantly talking about their truth instead of the truth. And I believe what he wants me to do is to speak the truth and build the truth. And building the truth looks completely different. It's a whole nother level of work, right? So it's like building the institutions behind the ideas, taking the work of the previous movement leaders and seeing that into reality. We no longer have to live by the limitations that our leaders got to get killed, they got to get jailed, they got to be broke. No, we get to break all of those spells and we get to live in this new reality. So my job is to see it through, right? My job is to see the schools built. My job is to see the institutions built. My job is to see the manufacturing and the distribution and, right, all of these things built. But these are stages of development. I can't do nothing overnight without no budget.
Yeah.
So it's like we have to build industry first. How do you do that? You have to do it through, like, number one, a well-oiled team that can bring that about. We have to do that through partnerships, right? We have to be very strategic about going about doing these things. But ultimately, I think my biggest goal is to build the truth, live the truth, right, and speak the truth, especially in a world that's dry of it.
Hey. All right, speaking of truth, I want to play a game with you.
Uh-oh.
Okay? I want to do rapid fire questions.
Uh-oh.
Can you handle it?
Yeah.
Okay. What is your favorite word?
Black.
What's your favorite thing about women?
Femininity.
You make $10 million. What's the first thing you do with that?
Buy land.
You find a $20 bill. What's the first thing you do with that?
Put it in my pocket.
Okay. 3 artists that you listen to while working out.
Pool. Right now I'm on that new Nas.
What pulls you out of bed?
Vision.
Celebrity crush.
None.
Celebrity you respect the most for their business acumen.
Jay-Z came to mind first.
Snack people will be surprised to know that you eat.
Oatmeal cookies with the raisins. Soft ones.
Soft ones, that part. What do you trust?
God.
Historic figure you wish you could do 100 push-ups with.
100 push-ups with a historical figure. John Horse. And if it wasn't him, it'd probably be Hannibal Barker. Oh, I gotta change that. No disrespect to John Horse, he was raw. But Hannibal Barker was a military genius.
When was the last time you've been in love?
Now I'm in love now. Yeah.
There it is, ladies. I'm taking care of y'all. Before we get ready to close, thank you for indulging in my rapid speed fire questions. As we close, you made a post, this year saying that 2023 was the year of movement for you. For the people who maybe are just learning or are novice to what you do and where you're going when we think about movement, what can the people expect to kind of like attach themselves to the mission, to the narrative, and where you're going, and what are the moves that you plan on making?
Well, one of the things that we really focus on is media this year. With High Level Media, I got my team of Mechi here. We really focus on, the next generation of creators, right? We can push. A lot of people, these podcasts are whack. We got a bunch of schools and a bunch of teachers, they play our show in classroom because our content is the type of content that can educate the minds and free the minds, right? So the High Level Media is about connecting with global creators and creating this as a global movement, because these are things that really cross borders, the type of information that we push out and the type of knowledge that we push. So the media component is huge. We also have something called High Level Land that I'm not going to speak on completely today, but just know that that's something that's coming soon. Right? But the media component is a huge thing that I really want to focus on. Of course, we have the education. We do the mentorship week to week, getting people mind together. So in that iteration, we work out with you and we take you through the financial training week to week. So as somebody that can help you with financial planning, somebody that can help you with stocks, somebody that can help you trade, right? Whatever it is that you need, right? You get those components inside that program. And then, we working on building a whole lot of things. There's some things I don't like to talk about until they're in front.
Yeah.
Right? And they're right there, because I'm at this point now where, you know, I'd rather present it to the people and say, look what we built, right? Than versus talk about what we're building in that developmental stage.
Facts.
But, you know, the goal is to take this as a global movement. And, you know, we looking to partner with anybody that believes in this mission of like pushing a new culture forward, right? And curating completely different type of mind, different type of content, because the content curates the attitude that we have towards reality in life. And the attitude constitutes the belief, right, that we have towards things, which constitutes the reality that we live. So whether that's towards food, whether that's towards media, whether that's towards education, whether that's to culture, music, right? We're going to touch all elements of it, and we're working with people that can help us with those elements be brought out at the highest level.
I love that. Keep changing the narrative, man.
Absolutely. I appreciate you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, and we out. Peace.